Today I'm going to look at a cold case that robbed one man of a chance to marry a Queen of England. This is the cold case of the death of Amy Robsart, who was the first wife of Robert Dudley, Earl of Leicester, best friend and possible lover of Queen Elizabeth I. It was Amy's death which still, whilst ruled by a jury as being an accident, is still seen by many as possible suicide or a possible murder. Either way, the political fallout from this woman's lonely and sad death led to the besmirchment of Robert Dudley and ruined his chances to take the hand of Queen Elizabeth I. And in doing that, this lady's death probably also meant that Queen Elizabeth never married, and the Tudors died out, all because of Amy Robsart's mysterious death. The story of the death of Amy Robsart actually begins with the love story of Robert Dudley and Queen Elizabeth. They are supposed to have met when she was simply Princess Elizabeth, daughter of Anne Boleyn and Henry VIII. And they're supposed to have met around the age of about 8 and become thick and firm friends. Realistically, they grew close due to their confinement in the Tower of London under Elizabeth's sister Mary I. Both of them being Protestant, both of them seen as a threat, and Dudley very specifically living under the threat of death at any point. It bonded them both. When Elizabeth became queen, within days of acceding to the throne, Dudley rushed to her side and was made Master of the Horse. I had to check that. I was like, have they spelt that wrong? Was he not Master of the House? Because this was a role that kept him very close to Elizabeth. And obviously she knew it would do. But it was Master of the Horse, and he is in charge of all their trips and also all the entertainment. So that meant that they spent an awful lot of time together. In any Hollywood movie, you will see them thick and fast together. In the Helen Mirren production of Elizabeth, again, even in later years, they were firm, very close, rumoured to have been lovers, although Elizabeth, on her deathbed, swears that this was not so. That in itself is a mystery, because in her final days, it is said that Queen Elizabeth didn't speak to anybody. There were no deathbed confessions, and yet she just decides to confess that she was truly the Virgin Queen. Dudley was an incredibly special person to Elizabeth. He died shortly after the Spanish Armada, and his final letter to her was kept in a wooden cabinet, and in her handwriting she had written his last note. Truly a love affair that, had she been able to raise a commoner to the position of king, perhaps she would have married him earlier, and he would not have married Amy Robsart in the first place. Robsart, probably saying that wrong. So we get to Amy. She is the wife of Robert Dudley. She is found dead in September of 1560. She's found with a broken neck at the bottom of a short flight of stairs. She also has 2 large head wounds. One is said to be a whole thumb deep. Now, the interesting thing about how Amy was found was the fact that there were no other bruising, no other damage to her, simply 2 head wounds and a broken neck. That led people to say, well, she must have been murdered then. She must have already been dead when she was thrown down the staircase to make it look like an accident. Others claim that it was suicide, that she was just in this unrequited love with Robert Dudley, and she was just completely cut up that he didn't take her along with him to court. Not that there was any reason why he should have. and that he was playing around with Queen Elizabeth and she was somehow desperately hurt by this. We have to remember 15th century marriages were not like we expect our love matches to be today, which is based on the idea of love and fidelity and not messing around. They were transactional. You were, as a woman, you were a good, you were a chattel. Even the Queen Elizabeth was told in many respects who she should and shouldn't marry. Hence, she was not able to take Robert when she was a lot younger, before the scandal. Yeah, women were married to secure lands. Women were married because they had inheritances. And men were chosen as husbands because they would provide titles. If these were just matches that were purely business transactions. So the idea that Amy was, you know, desperately sad that Robert might be somehow popular with Elizabeth and therefore making the most of it. I mean, frankly, she probably would have been happy. Man away from the house. She gets to live quietly and probably doesn't, you know, have to be particularly interested in a man that she may not actually have particularly found attractive. Although it is said that Dudley was a finely turned out man and had very long legs, was a good dancer. These things attracted Elizabeth, and he was almost 6 foot tall, which in those days, positive giant. I'm married to a guy that's 6'8", and that is a real giant, but in those 15th century days, 6 foot was quite the turnout for a man. So yeah, I mean, Dudley was a fine piece, as we might say. So that kind of potentially turns the idea of suicide on its head, or does it? You see, the problem with Robert Dudley in general is he was not well liked. He was seen as a man out for himself. There is a thing called the Leicester Chronicles, which was like a smack pamphlet written all about this man. To think of how he was written about in the time of Elizabeth I and beyond, because people kept trashing his reputation well into the mid to late 18th century. This was a man who was seen as the equivalent of Richard III, you know, hunchback and all the rest of it. This guy wasn't a hunchback. It was acknowledged he was good looking, but he was a scoundrel. He was a blackguard. He was a murderer, serial philanderer, and nobody had anything good to say about him. So pinning a murder on him worked brilliantly. He was always seen as a potential to marry Elizabeth, and this was always going to be problematic because she should marry a prince or a king. It should be a political alliance that brings power to England, and there were always those that were worried that she would marry this upstart, especially was his wife out of the way. And so they tried to pin murder on him. People tried to show that he had asked his men to go to the house and off his wife. None of this was proven to be true. An inquest happened in front of a jury. It is said that Robert asked for favourable jurors, but in the actual papers that have been read about this jury trial, it has been seen that what he actually said was, even if men are not favourable to me, this is okay. And he thanked his jurors for being fair. They looked at what little evidence there was, and they came to the conclusion that it was an accident. But the damage was done. Any chance that he would have a crown atop his head were completely over. But you know, God loves a trier, and he actually asked Elizabeth to marry him again. He waited 5 years after the death of his wife and actually asked Elizabeth again, which shows he was either very much in love with her or he really did have political aspirations. This was a close, truly close friendship. Who knows what would have happened had they been allowed to marry? Tell me in the comments below, do you think Amy's death, which technically speaking is still a cold case, people are not 100% about what happened, suicide, murder, or just tragic slip down the staircase? 1950s, one guy even added in that he believed she had breast cancer, and this had caused degradation in the spine, which caused just a fracture. As she was walking down the stairs, her neck broke and she died. Interesting ideas. What is your take on it? So that's it for our history mystery today. The cold case of the death of Amy Robsart and how it definitely prevented the ambitious and attractive Robert Dudley from getting his hands on a crown and hand in marriage to Elizabeth. If you enjoyed that, please give me a like, subscribe to the channel for more amazing myths, legends and mysteries that happen throughout a very long period of history that we have had. And if you love cold cases, I have a free one. It's in the description and the pinned comment, so sign up for it and be a smarty pants at the dinner table on the subject of who killed the princes in the tower.